He's been called a true son of Michigan State, but today the George Perles era comes to a close. Joe Paterno spent 45 years in Happy Valley. Today his Lions try to cap another perfect regular season. And two of his offensive stars have another chance to shine for all the world and the Heisman voters to see.
Flutie flushed. Throws it down. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. It's up. Destin to the right.
Lets it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught. Touchdown.
All right, welcome everybody to the College Football Retro Show. I'm your host, Dan Murphy, along with my co-host, Brian Barnes. And Brian, today we're going back to 1994. We're going to Happy Valley. We're going to Penn State. It is Michigan State at Penn State. And Brian, this was a game that you suggested to me. What is special about this game, and why are we doing this game today?
Oh man, Dan, it was I was finishing up high school, pretty close to being the end, so I remember this greatly. And I was a big Michigan State fan as a kid, as we've talked about before. And this was kind of the end of an era. It'd be George Perles' last game as the head coach at Michigan State. But I think more importantly, what came after him was pretty seismic in college football, because obviously Nick Saban took over the following year. And for Penn State, kind of heartbreaking for them in terms of, like, this game clinches an opportunity to go to the Rose Bowl, and they go and they win that game and finish the season undefeated, and they don't get recognized as even a co-national champion by either of the polls. And so a lot of intrigue going into this game. And then even leading up to the game, there was a lot of talk about, George Perles and his legacy at Michigan State and what he'd accomplished. And then kind of his last few years, though, the wheels kind of fell off a little bit, especially this year he got fired on November 8th. And so but he was able to finish out the season. Leading up to, like, who would the next coach be? And I remember there was a lot of talk and a lot of interest there. And so it was it was an interesting time. It was like that moment where, here we're planting the flag and, like, where's Michigan State football going to go, right? And then, gosh, if you're a Penn State fan, like, it's kind of like Florida State a couple of years ago. You go undefeated, like, what else do you want? You're right. What else do you want? And so, for all our criticisms for college football now, this is a bad time to be a Penn State Nittany Lion, because at that time, that was when Nebraska was rolling in the mid '90s, and they were about to have back-to-back championships, and so they were undefeated as well, and they didn't get the opportunity to play each other, which would have been a great game. But I remember, as a Michigan State fan, it was an opportunity, like, you had to get that sixth win to be bowl eligible, and Michigan State going into Happy Valley to play just a powerhouse, and kind of knew it wasn't going to happen, but at least there was a glimmer of hope. And so State fans were watching.
Yeah, and that, when I saw the final score, I thought, what? I get the stories. We're picking this game. I'm like, wow, is this game really going to be that great to go back and look at? And then as I'm doing, I'm like, man, this was actually a pretty good game until the fourth quarter. Penn State took over, but man, there was a lot of pro players on Michigan State side. They had some talent for sure.
They definitely did, and you're right. And you could tell with college kids, like, playing out of desperation, right? They, all those kids were recruited by George Perles, right? And they wanted to go to a bowl game, so you knew they were going to play hard. It was going to be interesting, and it ended up being a pretty decent game.
Yeah, for sure. So what aspects of George Perles that you remember, in terms of his career at Michigan State? I mean, what are some of his, biggest moments? in terms of his career there, and just talk a little bit about George Perles, his career, and what kind of he meant to Michigan State.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, he went to the Rose Bowl in 1987, and that was one of the best Michigan State teams ever. Won a co-Big Ten championship in 1990. Really had some good football players in his career. Like you could go down the list. Right, like Lorenzo White at running back, Bobby McAllister, Andre Rison was a star receiver for Michigan State. Like, they had some dudes. Percy Snow was a middle linebacker who played in the NFL. Like he was able to recruit, and he came from the Steelers and was a defensive guy, and brought a lot of respect to Michigan State. But there was also, I felt like, a lot of controversy surrounding George Perles. Right, all the talk about Tony Vanderich in the 1987 team, the biggest bust ever in the NFL, because he was considered the best offensive line prospect ever. Come to find out, he's taking steroids. How much did George Perles know? How much did his staff know? I mean, it's kind of hard to miss it. Like, Tony Mandrich, just like that became like the incredible bulk. Sports Illustrated cover called it, right. And so there always seemed to be controversy, and then even into that 94 season that we're talking about, there was some investigations about, professors and people doctoring grades and stuff like that. Michigan State ended up vacating all their wins that year, so they were technically 0-11 in 1994. But so there was a lot of issues in the program, and they had gone to a couple bowl games the previous couple of years. They lost the Liberty Bowl the year before to Louisville. They didn't go to a bowl game in 92. In 91, they were 3-8, right? So there was just, and that was after their 1990 season where they tied for the Big Ten championship. So there was just a lot of uncertainty in the program, and it felt like it was time for a change. And that's what happened. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And from Penn State's perspective, and we can get into this a little bit, but like going 12-0 and not winning a national championship. I always go back to this when we talk about this era and before the BCS and before obviously this playoffs, the expanded playoffs that we have now. It is inexcusable to have a system where a team can go undefeated, not lose a single game, and not only not win a championship, but not even have an opportunity to play for a championship. You cannot have a system like that. It doesn't work. It makes no sense.
No, you're right. In a major conference too. I mean, we're not talking about
the Big Ten,
right? Yeah, a Big Ten, right? So you felt awful for them, because remember too, they were independent for a long time, and this was their second year in the Big Ten. And I remember people saying that, like, oh, Penn State, they were independent, like get them in a real conference and they won't be successful. Well, the first year they went 10-2 in the Big Ten. They lost to Michigan and Ohio State, and then the next year they go undefeated. You know what I mean? So obviously they could coach ball and play ball and recruit just like anybody else. But just awful. I mean, I can't, I mentioned Florida State a couple of years ago. Very similar. You play who's on your schedule. Like, I don't know what else you wanted them to do. And the other part was, it wasn't like all their games were close either. It wasn't like, oh, well, you didn't beat, all the teams on your schedule by a lot. Well, no, for the majority of that, they did. Like, they were blowing teams out. And so, just brutal.
Well, they destroyed Ohio State that year. I mean, just annihilated them. That was a big game that season. Obviously, I think Ohio State might have been a top 10 matchup if I'm not mistaken. And Penn State just absolutely dominated. And they also went into Michigan. Michigan was a little bit down that year. That was the year they lost the Hail Mary game, and the season just didn't go the way that Michigan had planned. But still, Penn State went into the Big House and beat Michigan that year. So it's not like they had a bunch of garbage wins. Like, there's some big wins on that schedule that they had. So, I mean, just crazy to have a season like that and to not win at all. It's wild.
Yeah, you feel awful. And the big thing was like, this is where we talked about college football. It's the mythical national champions. The eye test said Nebraska would have beaten Penn State, but that'd have been a great game to watch. Nebraska that year obviously was undefeated, and they beat a one-loss Miami team in the Orange Bowl to win the national championship by 7. But there were some people that were kind of criticizing that win too, and saying like, oh no, maybe it should have been Penn State, or what would have happened if they played each other. But yeah, you never know. And that's the unfortunate
That would have been a great game, though. The physicality of that game, my goodness.
Would have been awesome. That'd have been fun to watch. Because that was, like, back then, I mean, football's evolved, but Nebraska was still your wishbone type style offense with those dudes, Lawrence Phillips and Tommy Frazier at quarterback, and just that style was a lot of fun to watch. And their offensive line was ginormous for the time, and it was still pretty big compared to everybody else. And that would have been a fun game to watch. But we didn't get it.
So it was Miami and Nebraska. So was that built in already based on conferences? Because what I'm thinking is if Penn State was still an independent, would there been an opportunity for them to maybe play in a bowl game,
I'm
or
pretty
was it
sure
conference based?
No, I know. Well, the Big Ten was obviously tied to the
Rose
Bowl.
Bowl,
Like
yeah,
that was
conference
no.
based.
Let me think. The big. I don't even know if it was the Big 12 then. It might have still been the Big 8. I
That's
should
what I
know. I
was
think it was the
thinking.
Big 8 in Miami. Miami might have been independent then. No, excuse me. Miami was in the Big East. So let me see. They were invited to the Orange Bowl, which served as the Bowl Coalition National Championship game. So you could argue there's a chance that if Miami wins, maybe no, they would have finished number 2. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a 100% like definite conference tie-in to that bowl game. I'm pretty sure it was for Nebraska, but I'm not sure if it was for Miami.
Because I
'Cause I
remember
don't.
Penn State went to a lot when they were a top team when they were independent. A lot of times they went to the
Mhm.
Sugar Bowl.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it just kind of just popped into my mind. I'm like, if they were independent, could they have played Nebraska? Could they have
So
matched up in a bowl game?
I feel like I'm a pretty good college football historian, especially for this era, and I actually don't remember it. I'm kind of embarrassed that I don't remember it. I want to say Nebraska had the Big 8, had the tie-in, but there was some flexibility for everybody else, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, I mean, it's one of those games that we were denied based on the system that was in place, and it's unfortunate because it would have been. And you can go to a lot of different seasons. Nebraska would be, if just a few years later would be in another one, or
Yeah.
Michigan, where they share the national championship, and in '97, and that's always an argument that obviously we have locally here is a lot of people feel that Michigan was the better team that year, but we'll never know because they never got to play, and that's where it ended, right? There was just so many arguments year after year, like how are we not getting these top teams on the field to play for the championship? And that's what created the BCS, and down the road, that's obviously where we got you mentioned the Florida State. That's what kind of ended the 4-year playoff, right? Or the 14 playoff, where it's like you got this team finishes 5th, they're undefeated, and they don't get in. Well, we got to expand it even further now. And now we're at the 12-team playoff, and we're right here now.
Well, so just remember though, like the way it used to be was at the end of a college football season, the bowl games were a reward for the teams, right? The bowl games weren't set up to then pick a champion or to finalize a champion, right? Like college athletics, like when this whole thing started, that was the reason. Like that was the system, right? It wasn't necessarily, hey, we're doing this to pick a champion. We're just rewarding teams. And then since then, like when you got opinions involved and like politicians were involved with the polls, politicking for certain teams to be number 1. And they used to pick a national champion before bowl games even. So like that was kind of skewed and it was just kind of silly. And then over the last, you're right, when we started getting those split titles, when like college football really took off in the 80s and 90s, and when viewership was sky high in the media, ESPN and all the college football, all the networks, like that was when people really started saying like, all right, we need to do this right and get a national title champion. Right. But that was the way it was. I mean, think about, again, Michigan State and Notre Dame, the 10-10 tie in 1966. You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame, finishes one spot ahead of Michigan State and they tied on the field. I mean, there's really no way to pick a winner. It was just kind of like, all right, that's it. Everybody, So, just wild. And you think about it today, how different it is.
Yeah, now we're having completely different arguments, of why this system now doesn't work.
Right.
It's like, and maybe there just isn't, a perfect system. But we definitely know that the system that was in place in 1994 was definitely not perfect. To have a situation where you have a team go undefeated and not be able to play for the championship is just insane. So
you're right. I mean, regardless, it's not okay.
Yeah,
not okay.
Absolutely. So, Brian, let's go ahead and get into this game now. If you want to go ahead and go over the rosters and the coaching staffs for both teams.
I do. So the names that stand out for Michigan State, like obviously we talked about Coach George Perles, but Norm Parker was his defensive coordinator, and he's had a long tenure as a defensive coordinator at Iowa. He's considered one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. Their team had some talent, guys that played in the NFL. Tony Banks was their quarterback, and he played in the league for a good amount of years. Flozell Adams was a lineman for the Cowboys for quite a long time. He might have been an All-Pro a couple times. And receiver, and one my cousin's favorite player of all time, Derek Mason, who fantasy football seemed to be a decent guy, like receiver for a long time. Yeah, he was a good football player. And my favorite name of any football player of all time played on this Michigan State team. He was a receiver, Napoleon Outlaw. Super cool name. I remember that. And defensively, Ike Reese played a long time in the NFL for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm sure a few other teams as well, but I remember him the most with the Eagles. And so, there's some talent there. It's just a weird, just a strange season for Michigan State. And then Penn State, like the names that pop off, I think fans that wouldn't know this team wouldn't say like, they're not that good because they didn't really go off in the pros, but like they were lighting it up in college football. Kerry Collins, well, let me backtrack. Joe Paterno was the head coach, obviously, and obviously comes out a lot later, all the issues that he had in his program. And, at the time, though, he was considered, a legend even then. And another interesting name, their offensive coordinator was Fran Gantner, and he was a hot name that people talked about as a potential Michigan State coach after this game. And obviously that didn't happen. I remember thinking, that'd be great. He's an offensive mind. He'd be a lot of fun. But it didn't happen, and it ended up being okay for Michigan State. But Kerry Collins was our quarterback, quarterback the Super Bowl team, the New York Giants in the NFL. Bobby Ingram was a receiver. Kyle Brady was an NFL player. Joe Jurevicius, like all these guys were players. Ken Herring was a safety, played a long time for the Ravens. And then the best player on the team, in my opinion, right, ended up being the number 1 overall pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. It was Kajana Carter, and one of my running back, and one of my best friends, huge Bengals fan. And I remember our senior year of high school, that following year, we decided to go to a Detroit Lions preseason game against the Bengals, and that's where Kajana Carter tears his ACL in the preseason game, and he's out for the rookie year. And to think about what
he never was the same.
No, and to think about how
different time. You guys come back from knee injuries now, like it's nothing. But back then, you blow your knee out. That was like, man, you're thinking about career ending.
No doubt. And he was good. He was so good, and so that was a bummer for him. But yeah, man, like they were loaded. Like again, it was a really good team, and you talked about it. Some of their scores, like they weren't close. Week 1, 56-3 against Minnesota. Like, I mean, teams now aren't doing that against fellow conference opponents. 38-14 over a ranked USC team. 61-21 over Iowa. I mean, they were just blowing teams out. Yeah. And like you mentioned, that Ohio State game, Ohio State was ranked 21 at the time, and it was 63-14. And that was after, beating Michigan in the previous game. Like they were just
back to back.
Yeah, they did. Wow. They were just so good. Like they were just so good. And then up to this game. So, and then in the Rose Bowl, they played, Michigan State did not make a bowl game that year, but they played Oregon, who this was before Oregon was Oregon that we can think of, right? I remember this wasn't the flashy uniforms Oregon or anything like that.
No,
this is the goofy looking, like, almost like Disney.
Looking.
Yeah. You wouldn't think it. I mean, this was an Oregon team that lost to Hawaii and Utah that year, and ended up.
Those uniforms were not not drawn in the young teenage recruits. Back then,
no, definitely not. And but that Oregon team won the Pac-10 and went to the Rose Bowl, and Penn State beat them, and that's something that hurt Penn State as well. And again, not even their fault, right? Their opponent they played in the postseason, where all eyes would be on them, right? Keep in mind, January 1st, right? It's still a big thing, but back then it was like the thing. All eyes are on them, and they beat an Oregon team that you could argue.
Well, actually, the interesting thing, when I went back and researched this, Brian, so they actually played that game on January 2nd, the Rose Bowl. So the game Nebraska played on the 1st.
You're right. My apologies.
So when they played the Rose Bowl, they kind of already knew that they couldn't win the national championship because Nebraska had won.
No,
Pretty crazy scenario. So I don't know. January 1st, maybe it's
still
on a Sunday or something. I don't know.
could have been. Regardless,
odd that they moved the game.
Still a lot of eyes on them. Rose Bowl, right? Still around the New Year's Day time. I mean, in an opportunity to show their stuff, and they still won 38-20. But it wasn't like, I mean, if that game would have been a 62-20 game, like maybe they get some votes, right? Maybe you get a split title, but that didn't happen for them. So,
I just want to jump in real quick, Brian. So we got a comment from Kevin Page asked about Muhsin Muhammad for Michigan State. He was definitely a receiver, and you'll see him at the end of this game. You know, a little bit of garbage time, but he doesn't catch a touchdown in this game. So
fantastic. I think
again, just another stud that Michigan State.
Yeah, had a long career, played for the Panthers. Yeah, excellent call.
Had a big catch in that Super Bowl game against the Patriots.
He did. Yeah, he did. No, excellent call. So again, great football game. Yeah, a lot of talent on both sides. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So we could go ahead and jump right into this. Michigan State is going to get the ball first here, and we're actually going to see Derek Mason. And as mentioned earlier, he's going to have a big game in this game, and he's going to get a touchdown on this first drive. But here we go.
First throw on 3rd and 6. Man open in the flat. What a great one-handed catch by Green. Dives ahead for the first down. Situation of the game. Number 45. Banks, plenty of time. Wide open. Goulburn out of the backfield. Another Spartan first down. Sometimes he doesn't even have enough time to study film and isn't quite sure what he's studying when he does. Scott Green. That's why they
Scott Green, kind of like an H-back role, fullback role here. The way he plays in this game is kind of like a traditional H-back.
He was like the
Here's the Mason touchdown here, and a crossing route.
Yeah, Scott Green, H-back before the H-back kind of became a thing.
Yeah.
The free safety took a very bad angle on that square and route, cost them 7 points. A nice punt return by our
Michigan State jumps out. Obviously a big underdog, jumps out early, gets the early touchdown.
Brady is tight end, and the All-American works his way down to the 10.
Brady, the tight end. He ended up playing for the Jets, right, Brian? Brady.
He did.
There's Carter. Penn State bounces right back. Carter's first of what would be 5 touchdowns in this game. Michigan State, they would exchange punts. Let's see, get the ball back here. Trick play.
Airs it out for Ingram. Got it. And Ingram's going to score. Touchdown.
Bobby Ingram. Pretty interesting, though, there, Brian, to bring out, kind of a trick play, pretty early in the game.
It is. Like, typically, like I've always thought when you run trick, like, there's 2 trains of thought. You run a trick play when you know you're not as good as your opponent, or that's just kind of who you are, and you have one in your pocket once every week. But I don't think Penn State was that worried about losing to Michigan State. But
you might have been a little bit worried after immediately after that play.
Yeah.
Derek Mason takes it back 100 yards for the kick return touchdown.
Now,
Michigan State's feeling pretty good, man. They're hanging, going toe to toe.
I'd be curious to ask if we get any comments. This would be cool. Like the Michigan State unis, the pants are a little darker, like that forest green look. I kind of like it because I don't think they did that all year. A little bit different, but I'm kind of a uniform guy.
As he would do all
I
game.
think Jeff Hardings was a lineman on that Penn State team who was a Lions draft pick. Ended up winning a Super Bowl with, I want to say the Steelers.
Yeah.
In 04, maybe? 05 in Detroit. Reggie Garnett was one of my favorite middle linebackers. Thought he'd have a better career in the NFL.
This would be Michigan State trying to be bounced back, get a drive deep into Penn State's territory, but a fumble on 4th and 1.
And now the offense has it back. First down from the 20.
But really, the key, Michigan State, they just cannot stop Penn State's offense, man.
Yeah, I mean, nobody could, though. That's the thing with this Penn State offense. Sure. They were so good. He didn't seem like the most shifty back in the world, but, man, could he fly.
Hard to bring down, too.
and decisions about pressure and all that kind of stuff is all part of having fun. So I'm the player.
With Chris Solani to hold. And he's got it up and good. With 20 seconds left. That's the problem. 20 seconds left for Penn State. 24-17 now with
24-17 at halftime, Brian. So, I mean, we get to halftime, high-scoring game, back and forth, but Michigan State's hanging right in there with them.
I agree, but I would guess if you asked the Michigan State coaches how they were feeling at halftime, it probably wasn't good. Like, I think they're probably thinking,
coaches for sure,
right? If they're thinking like, okay, we're gonna win this game. It's got to be pretty. We got to muck it up a little bit, be pretty low scoring, and obviously they turned it over. And it's being down 7 isn't the end of the world, but you've already given up 24 points. And that's the thing. It wasn't like, okay, they're not gonna be able to match them score for score, in the second half. And so, yes, it's competitive, but I'm sure they kind of felt like, and you and I have been there. It's like, yeah, you know what, this might be a tough second half.
And it puts so much pressure on your offense. Like, you got to score almost every drive. And those last couple drives for Michigan State in that first half, you get the turnover, you get inside the red zone and you turn it over, you get no points. And then that drive at the end of the half, they get inside the 10 and have to settle for a field goal. So, like you said, as the coaching staff, you feel decent because you're hanging in there with them. But at the same point, you're like, man, we needed more than 3 points on those last couple drives.
Yep, no doubt. And I wonder too, like, we just, when we opened the show, we talked about the importance for Michigan State, like, hey, potentially George Perles' last game, let's win this game and get to a bowl game. I guess I'm surprised maybe they didn't go a little bit more risky in those situations, right? Taking a shot to the end zone. Why not? Desperate times call for desperate measures kind of thing.
Or maybe even play it like a lot of 4-down territory. Obviously, that
right.
the one where they fumbled, it was a 4th and 1 situation. But maybe in that situation, they ended up. I think it was at the 7. They tried to throw it to the end zone, and ended up being incomplete. But maybe you play for play it as 4-down territory. Because you got to match them.
You got to steal a possession somewhere with an onside kick or a fake punt or something.
Yeah, something along those lines. So to see kind of Penn State pull out a trick play, maybe Michigan State should have left it all on the line, pulled out everything that they had.
Then again, maybe Penn State's doing that to impress voters. And I know that sounds dorky like now, right? But back then, maybe they're trying to do all that stuff to impress the voters even more. Well,
I mean, not that play particularly, but just throughout the course of this game, and we'll see it later on with Kajana Carter staying in, where he'd get a late rushing touchdown. There, but Kerry Collins and Carter both going for the Heisman.
That is true. Yeah.
This is the last game of the regular season, so this is their last time to show those voters as well, to go for a Heisman Trophy.
Very true.
So we'll go ahead and jump into the second half here. Penn State gets the ball first. On
second down, a counter to John Carter. Well, they didn't stop it here. And they may not stop him at all.
And whatever halftime adjustments Michigan State may or may not have made to try to stop Kajana Carter, obviously, not be very effective. This is just a straight fullback dive.
Yeah, sometimes adjustments just don't matter. If you don't have the Johnnies and Joes.
Another touchdown for Carter. And this is where, at this point, Penn State's starting to really kind of grab hold of this game at this point. That's a 2-touchdown lead for Penn State. So Michigan State fighting to stay in this one.
This time right on the mark. Derek Mason, he's been the big play man. Couldn't hold the interception. 2nd and 10. And it's Tony Banks bootlegging out.
Banks making a nice play with his feet here.
I was a big Tony Banks fan back in the day. I was a big fan of his when he was, he kind of a trivia question. He was a starting quarterback for the Ravens Super Bowl team to start the season, and then Trent Dilfer took over.
Yeah, they were like 5-5, I think, going into a bye week or something. Then they went to Dilfer. There you see a big pass interference in the end zone. And there it is, Scott Green.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys, man. He's a great college football player that would play, really at any era.
For sure. He would have.
A guy like that.
For sure.
Out to midfield, got back across.
But again, man, Michigan State still hanging into it. They did, cut to a one-score lead.
Double pumps and rifles it, completes it to Ingram. First down at the 34-yard line.
There's only 3 seniors on this offense.
Here's one of them. Collins rifles it.
I'd say just too much.
Loaded. Yep. Loaded.
Yep.
Nice, Carter. They're just unstoppable. Absolutely unstoppable. Out there, Michigan State punt. So this was a big play here. This was a 3rd and 10 that Michigan State gave up. I mean, pretty much a crucial play, backbreaker play. At that
couldn't get off the field.
It's touchdown number 4.
They'll blitz Banks. He got around it again.
Michigan State drive here. Banks trying to make something happen. He gets down. Looks like he was down. Didn't have replay at this point. Fumble. Goes to Penn State. You can see Tony Banks arguing. He's just frustrated as all heck now. He's probably down. He doesn't get the call. He's feel the game slipping away. And Penn State goes for the dagger immediately after.
That's smart.
Man.
Yeah. Like I mean, watching this, like you feel it slip. I was just going to say, you just like, those kids are feeling it, man. It is slipping away. Like it was a tough season for Michigan State. All they're going through, and this game slowly, like they competed for a while. And then it's like just the snowball effect, it felt like, you know what I mean?
Well, I just want to get your thoughts as a coach on that particular play, because you see it a lot and you hear about it a lot. But as a head coach and as a play caller, when you get that situation, your defense creates a turnover. Just the thought process of kind of going for the kill, going for a big play immediately the first play after that.
You can coach against sudden change situations as much as you possibly can, right? So, you do everything you can to prepare for your team for those situations. So Michigan State's coaches, like they have those moments scripted in practice where like, all right, sudden change situation, like, hey, we don't get to sit down and get our breath. We got to go back out there and no excuses. We got to make a play. Like you can coach all that up like crazy, but still it's not easy to then like gear back up and get a stop and make a play. And heck yeah, offensively, you and I have been in those situations. Like when in doubt, man, after a turnover or something like that, a swing in quote unquote momentum, right? Like we're not messing around. Let's take a shot and put this thing away. Because again, it's like one of those, like, they're smelling the blood kind of thing. Penn State's like, right, they're like, all right, let's put the nail in the coffin and be done with and go to the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, smart.
Yep.
Smart.
Absolute dagger though. But it's just man, like you said, Michigan State hung with them as long as they could. They battled. But man, soon as it started to slip a little bit, Penn State wasted no time and just put the hammer down, man. Absolutely put the hammer down. Let's see here. I mean, Happy Valley is rocking. You can see the camera shaking. Extra throw.
12:28 left in the game. The top scoring team in the country has put 52 up. After being tied today, that's
I should say, I mean, give him credit. They didn't quit. They kept playing. Derek Mason showing himself again as one of the best players that was on that field that day.
Here comes a blitz from Willie Smith. Banks got away from it. To the end zone, touchdown.
There it is. There's your Muhammad touchdown.
There's it.
Willie Smith has a shot 3 times in the game. You think he's going to learn one that Tony Banks is going to spin out.
No game the last time he carried it.
Here we go real quick, Brian. In a situation like this, interested in your take as a head coach, like we talked about Kajana Carter potentially going for a Heisman Trophy. I was reading, I sent it to you. There's a LA Times article you can find from, the day after this game. And they, interviewed Kajana Carter, and he was close to getting 200 yards for the game. So he asked to come back to play this last drive to go over 200 yards. What would your thoughts be there in that situation? Because I mean, obviously you're going to have some time before the Rose Bowl, but the game is over.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, right? Because you don't want last thing you want is for him to go out there and get hurt in kind of a meaningful situation, non-meaningful situation. But he also is going for the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, you're right. I think you need to know your kid and you need to know your player to determine whether or not that's worth the risk. Like if he's injury prone already, like don't bother. But if he's not, maybe give him a couple carries, here and there. The funny thing about it is he didn't win the Heisman that year. He finished second to Rashaan Salam, and the numbers, though, like the amount of touchdowns were pretty comparable. Salam had 24 and Kijana Carter had 23. But Rashaan Salam had over 500 more yards than Kijana Carter did, right?
Wow.
So, like, yeah, I mean, I didn't realize. I thought it was closer than that as well. Granted, he had 100 more attempts, but still. So it wasn't like Kijana Carter was catching them either, though. You know what I mean? Necessarily, right? In terms of just yardage. So, I mean, again, I'm the type that would probably err on the side of not letting him play and just saying, no, we got bigger things, to look forward to. But I think it depends on the player and it depends on your relationship and your trust factor with the player.
Yeah. So we'll see. He's coming in. He's trying to get go over 200 yards. He would go well over 200.
He'll try it again on a toss.
He just breaks it.
It's crazy again, though. Like I said, he wasn't very shifty, but like at the running back spot, like you said, he was hard to bring down and he could fly. Like he just, like there was a point where you're like, oh, they're going to get him here, they're going to get him there, and he just outran him.
32nd year of college football.
Yeah, it's fine to play the game here.
Under Joe Paterno. They will end their regular season unblemished, unbeaten, untied, and for the 7th time, unbeaten and untied under Joe Pop.
So one thing you're not going to really see anymore, watching that, guys holding the roses at the end of a regular season game of the Big Ten, is it's not like I guarantee you. I hope that someday it would be like the Big Ten championship game, maybe moves to the Rose Bowl or something along those lines. But yeah, it is something that you just won't see anymore. And there's George Perles walking off the field for the last time, and they'll do it there. So, what do you think, Brian? What are your thoughts here?
Gosh, it was, like I said, it was a program in transition. And as a Michigan State fan, like I mentioned, Fran Gantner was a guy that name was thrown out a lot. Gary Blackney, who's the head coach at Bowling Green, I remember his name was one that Michigan State was really interested in, and then obviously ended up being Nick Saban. And I remember at the time he was with the Cleveland Browns, and I don't even know if he was a defensive coordinator or just the DB's coach. He might have been the defensive coordinator though, and I remember thinking to myself, God, who is this guy? I wanted an offensive guy, some excitement, and little, what did I know? I was 14, 15 years old, but
yeah, Nick Saban
playing, who's right? Some defensive
for the Browns under Bill Belichick,
right? Yeah, come on, what do we do?
Belichick, who's he?
Right, exactly.
What coaching tree does he have?
Right, exactly. So
at the time,
it's funny. It's so funny the perception we can all have about coaches, and like there are some great coaches that haven't won a lot of games. You know what I mean? Or they're just in the wrong situation, and vice versa. But yeah, that was a heck of a time period. And then for Penn State, like we said, they were a program that was to be reckoned with. But I want to say this was like the last time that I can remember that Penn State was really, I don't want to say nationally relevant, but was national championship caliber or close. I can't think of it.
At 97, they went in. Michigan went in.
I remember. I do remember that game. Yes, and
they were both in the top 5, and Michigan laid the hammer down.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, they were undefeated going into that game, but they ended up that year with 3 losses. That Penn State team.
Yeah, it kind of fell apart after that. After that loss.
Right. But you're right. But I mean, I guess at the end of the year. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, just but great team, great game. Interesting time for, like, it was a historic moment for college football because again, the Nick Saban era began and the rest is history. for college football.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking over that final clip of the game there, but Brad Nessler was talking about a quote that Joe Paterno gave about George Perles, and basically just, it's going to be really difficult to replace somebody like George Perles. They're underestimating how difficult it is going to be to replace somebody of that caliber, and they end up hiring Nick Saban.
Just right. It's funny. It's funny. Well, George Perles again was like, he came for the Steelers. Like, he had Super Bowl rings. He won a couple Big Ten championships. He was not terrible, right? But then then you get replaced by the best ever. So,
but I mean, Nick Saban didn't. It's not like he brought Big Ten championships or anything along those lines to Michigan State. George Perles brought really more to Michigan State than Nick Saban did.
Well, okay, true, but I mean, if the argument, and Michigan State fans always tell you this, if Nick Saban's still there, I don't know if I don't think he's Nick Saban, LSU and Alabama, but Michigan State is probably they're better off if Nick Saban is there, and I'm sure they've had more. They would have more Big Ten championships and potential national championships there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't have gone through the terrible lull that they went through until, from that time period, from the time Nick Saban left to the time that D'Antonio came in, that was a pretty dark time for football.
And we've had, conversations about Michigan State on here, and just, sitting out to dinner and stuff. Like, it's weird. It's like they're a program that has had upper echelon coaches and upper echelon athletes. Like, there was, you can go down the list. Le'Veon Bell was the best running back in the NFL for years. He was a Michigan State guy. Like, so it's not like they don't have potential or promise for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. For whatever reason, something's bigger than that that's just keeping them from getting to that next level, that nationally elite level.
They were close, though. I mean, you got to give them credit. When they had D'Antonio and you brought the Le'Veon Bell, they had that game against Notre Dame where just some inexcusable pass interference penalties that came against them that really cost them that game. If they win that game, they're playing for a national championship. And then we always talk about, if they had the expanded playoffs at that point,
no doubt,
that's definitely a team that would have been to be reckoned with in the playoff system.
Yeah, no doubt. You're right. They were close. So again, though, they get guys. There's every now and then, yes, like, it can be done. It just boggles my mind that it can't be consistent, right?
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And so we're gonna wrap it up here. I wanted to play this video because this kind of, from a local's perspective, this is really about George Perles. And this was a piece that was done by WOD TV8. I found on YouTube. Just talking. This was after George Perles had passed away a few years back, and they just did a little piece on his career. So we're going to go ahead and play that.
Michigan State lost a true Spartan today. For people outside of the program, George Perles leaves behind a complicated legacy. He led the program to some of its highest moments, like a Big Ten championship in 1987, capped off by the Rose Bowl win in 1988. He sent a steady stream of players to the National Football League, including Ty Halleck, who said Perles was one of his biggest and most important mentors.
For me as a young person, I went there as a freshman, from a small town, end up playing right away. My next year, I was a little bit lost, got a job during the summer, really wasn't kind of ready to get back into football, some personal things, and didn't think I wanted to play anymore. And he helped walk myself and my family through a few days of what I would consider younger age turmoil.
Mitch Lyons also stayed close to home to play for Perles, and his relationship runs just as deep because he served on the Michigan State Board of Trustees with Perles after his NFL career ended, and he established himself in the business world. Lyons said the biggest thing Perles taught him was the value of hard work. He had to earn his stripes at Michigan State.
It took me until my third or fourth game of my junior year to start, and I remember him coming up at the end of towards the end of the season before practice started, and I was stretching, and he says, kind of gives me a smirk and says, "How'd you get so good?" And I said, "Coach, you finally gave me a chance, right?" But he was big on being ready when you got that chance, so it's true in a lot of things in life.
Now, Perles' legacy was not perfect. There was controversy as well. His firing as head coach stemmed from an academic scandal that rocked the program, and he was on that board of trustees during the Larry Nassar scandal. Ty Halleck says one thing nobody can question was the love that Perles had for Michigan State. He's served that university in one capacity or another for decades.
I really truly believe down in my heart, George Perles, not unlike my dad, Tom Halleck, was a man who loved his family, had faith, and did everything he felt was right at the time. Not to say he was perfect, but I'm not either. I know you wouldn't consider yourself that way. To me, in this time, in reflection, I just think that George Perles was a treasure for Michigan State. He loved Michigan State. He wanted to do everything he could to help out the wonderful university that gave him many opportunities.
Perles' coaching record 68, 67, and 4. Under his guidance, Michigan State won 2 Big Ten championships. He was 85 years old and died of complications from Parkinson's.
There is Brian. Any final thoughts on this game, the 1994 Michigan State Penn State game?
No, man. It was one of the good ones. It was a different time, but it was a fun one to watch, and it was a fun one to talk about tonight.
Yeah, for sure. This is, a lot of those ones we try to pick, the real down to the wire games, but this one had a lot of storylines, a lot of interesting things to look at, obviously with George Perles' career and who would follow him, and Nick Saban, and also to look back at a team in Penn State that went 12-0 and didn't play for the national championship. Just a different time, a different era, but that's why we love doing this, man. There's things, games that personally, I never saw this game. I didn't watch this game. So it was cool to go back and kind of break that down and see some of those players that, maybe I had forgotten about or hadn't seen. And, a fun one to go down. So we haven't picked the game for next week. So we're going to have to kind of go through it, because we try to, in season, we're going to try to pick games to kind of line up with what's going on with a game coming up that weekend. But
I threw it out there to you. I know Michigan plays Northwestern this week, and there have been some good games over, our lifetime there. I still think a Michigan Northwestern one would be a good one, even though they're playing tomorrow. I still think that'd be a good one to pick for next week. So we'll talk about it and see.
You always, as a Michigan State fan, you always want to throw the Michigan losses at me, but
it's okay. Here, you want to know why? Here's why I think. Here's why. When those Michigan losses were significant, though, right? It was a lot of them were like not expected. Like, really? Did Northwestern really just beat Michigan in 1995? Like he did,
96.
yeah. Like, is that really like that's why I think, right? Because there was that era where Michigan, it was still competing for Big Ten titles every year, right? 10 wins every year. And so when they lost, it was a big deal, man. It was like, for a lot of people, a long time to get over. So that's why it doesn't have to be, it can be,
I'm just picking on it. But it's just funny, like that era. And that's why we love doing these games so much, because every game felt like a big game, even when it was a Michigan Northwestern. And like you said, when there was a big upset, it really mattered, because one loss can derail your whole season.
For sure. Yep. Agreed. Well, we'll talk and we'll see.
We'll let you guys know what we're going to pick. But obviously the week following, we get into Michigan Ohio State week, and we're planning on maybe doing a couple games, a couple shows that week to celebrate that week, because for me personally, that's my favorite week of the year, my favorite game of the year. So we're going to be really looking forward to that one. So, but for this one, this was the 1994 Michigan State Penn State game, and for Brian Barnes, I'm Dan Murphy, and we'll see you again next week.